and you push that out to production, the goal, and keep in mind I say goal, it's not quite there yet, but the goal is so you don't have to worry about any, say, data limits or hitting any premium access blocks or functionality once your application's out. So the way it performs in your sandbox mode is ideally the way it should perform actually in production without any limitations. And there are a great deal of technical challenges that have to be conquered in order to make that happen. But that's why, you know, with open source projects, we have brilliant minds all over the world building really cool stuff. So that's the idea. So the point of the project, well, I kind of went a little quickly there, but the original point of the project was to learn. So where I come from in the States, we don't necessarily use the Symfony framework a lot. We are gradually moving into that now in recent projects. But so when I got here to Europe in July, everybody was asking me, you know, looking at different jobs, looking at various meetups, what's your experience with Symfony? What's that about? I had basically had nothing to say, right? Because we didn't use the framework. It actually turns out to be a really cool framework, but that was the original idea of the project, was to learn that framework and to grow my knowledge of geospatial abilities, RESTful services, that sort of thing. And then I realized it was filling a need, right? So we basically wanted a completely easy to use, no bullshit platform for developers, right? Easy consumption. And so that became the shift of the focus on the project became that, to deliver that platform that provides everything the developer will need in terms of geospatial type interaction with their users on their application level through this API. So now, how the API functions. This is where it gets kind of cool. Now, originally, I had a sequence chart here, and then a friend of mine helped me realize that that's rather silly for a presentation. Thanks there, Franz. So we replaced that with just a few shapes and some lines to give you an idea. But of course, like anything else, if you would like the sequence or would like to jump deeper into the technical stuff, definitely make sure you grab me after the presentation during the networking event. I'll be around for a while. But so the first step is you have a client, right? Say this is your mobile application, iOS, Android, whatever. Say this is your mobile application, and you want to show your user what is near you. Say you want the top 5 cities, the closest 5 cities to you with a population of, say, 2 million people with at least one international airport, right? So the goal is the client makes that request to the API, and that lands at our services, at our RESTful API server, right? So then we take those constraints and we form a query, a geoquery that's run on the database. So we had actually played around a lot with various different databases to house this data set. It's a lot of information, and you run into, you know, table locks with MySQL or, say, other performance issues, read-write. So we played around with Mongo and MySQL, but what we ended up settling with, of course, was PostgreSQL for the PostGIS extension. Those win hands down. So we run our query, our geoquery on this database, and then we formulate that response and send it back to the user. So in this response, we, as data is available, of course, we provide information about the city. So you ask for the top 5 cities, right? We'll have population, square feet, or sorry, miles or kilometers, depending on what you request. You can set those metric units in the request. Demographics when available, that type of thing. Now, a couple notes about the request is everything is, of course, done over SSL. That's kind of our responsibility as a web service or web provider to make sure everything is secure. And your responses can be requested however the developer wants. You know, that's pretty standard, whether you want to receive that, consume that in JSON or XML. You know, it may make sense for XML versus JSON. Don't know, maybe. Apps are managed completely in the dashboard. So a lot of similar projects, you know, registration and management of your applications is not, it's not the cool part, right? And it's not in any project. It's not the cool part. So it doesn't get much attention to detail. But we wanted to create this beautiful service to allow this interaction between geospatial representation and your applications. But we also wanted to make it as easy as possible. And that's why we have an app dashboard. And then, of course, as I said before, we use the OSM dataset. Now, I want to jump just a little deeper into the dataset. I think most people are probably pretty familiar what the OpenStreetMap project is. And it's actually a really cool project. So it's entirely community driven, right? And their goal is to map the entire world. And this is like local knowledge. They focus on local knowledge. So you have people out there with low-tech field maps, with aerial images, with GPS devices, verifying that the data that is available in OpenStreetMap that has been contributed is actually valid and is useful. It's verified that way. And then of course regular updates. So you can diff. The data set itself is huge. It's like, I think it's what, 49, 50 gigabytes or something now. I don't remember right off the top of my head, but it's a massive data set if you're taking the Planet OSM. And downloading that and parsing that can become a hassle, and that's actually this goes back to my point about learning and growing with this type of thing. The way we parsed that was a very expensive mistake in the beginning. You can collect those in diffs and then update your data set as well. And of course that's open for contributors, and you can find more about that on their website at openstreetmap.org. But now that we've jumped into a little technical stuff, let's jump over to what we use. So of course, as I said, we use the Symphony framework. It's one when you've got to kind of wrap your mind around it, and then make some tweaks and adjustments, and it turns out to be something that's actually pretty neat. Of course, everything's available on GitHub, just like most projects you see here today. We use Git, of course, for versioning, and then our unit testing, of course, with PHP. Since it's Symphony, it's LAMP stack. PHP unit. And then, of course, Travis for our builds, our automated builds right there through GitHub, easy integration, free for open source projects, and then coveralls to help us monitor our code coverage. And that helps increase quality, that type of thing. So I spoke way too fast. We're coming to the end of the presentation now, only 8 minutes in. There are many ways that people can contribute. We need help, right? Like any open source project, you can have 5 people working on it, and you have 5 brains working together. But if you have 100 brains working together, you can build something that's amazing. Nobody knows everything, and that's why we work in teams, and that's why we need a team, right? So we need help in front end. I'm a back-end guy, so the CSS I write a lot of times is like, front-end guys are like, what the hell is that? It's not my strong suit. Back-end guys, so of course with the bulk of the project being the API, that's all back-end, right? That's all interfacing, communication between the applications and the API. So that's all back-end. And then, of course, technical writers for docs, server admins. So right now we work in a VPS environment, and we spin up a droplet as needed, but we definitely need help. What's the best server configuration for this type of thing? Keeping our stuff updated so we're not, hacked and that sort of thing. And then graphic and web designers, especially, because as I said, I'm not creative and I can barely draw stick figures. So we definitely need it to look pretty. We can have something cool, but we should also have it look pretty. And then of course users. Users are probably the most important part of any open source project, right? If you don't have people using it, you don't have a point. You can't expand and grow on that particular product or that particular service if you don't have people using it, because you can run through your tests, you can run through your use cases and scenarios, but you really don't know how it's going to behave or what your users actually need until it's out there in the field and actually being used and pushed to those limits. And that's kind of the idea of open technology, is to reach those limits, but to push past them and to expand on those. So of course you can find the project on GitHub. There's the link there, and you can find me, of course, after the presentation to discuss more, and then on the website at freegeoapi.org. So now now, since I mentioned a little bit open source, and since this is the OpenTechSummit, I feel like at least the bulk of you are interested in open stuff. So I'm going to insert a shameless plug here for my open source meetup here in Berlin. We meet once a month, and the idea is to just connect developers with projects and projects with developers. We've been having a really good crowd lately, and you see all kinds of presentations for really cool projects, and it's all tech is welcome. Nothing too specific. So in conclusion now, I would like to wrap up and give a quick thanks to Mario and the OpenTechSummit for the opportunity to speak. And then, of course, you have my contact information there, email and web. You probably have an easier time reaching me on Twitter. It's really easy to respond to Twitter, so if you need something, just tweet there. And then, of course, I'm on GitHub and LinkedIn. That was entirely too fast, so I apologize for that. I was nervous, but thank you. Where is our... Any questions? Yes, sorry.
We have time for questions.
Yes.
So you are so far, so you're from New York? Or?
From Phoenix, actually.
Okay. I thought only guys from New York talk that fast.
Yeah, well, nervous guys from Phoenix do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, there's a question.
Yep.